Hey there, and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to go over just a quick portrait edit. I'm going to walk you through kind of how I go through and highlight my dramatic portraits with Photoshop and Camera Raw. It's not a very extensive process. It stays pretty natural. Nothing too wild to change the overall image. I hope you don't mind looking at my face this entire time. So we're going to get started here, and the first thing I like to do generally is straighten the image up if it's not straight up and down. Like this image kind of doesn't apply that because of the head turn and everything, but if it was an image where my shoulders were in there and I didn't look upright, then I would want to go ahead and make some minor adjustments to kind of straighten that out. Secondly, I want to, I usually change my color profile to camera standard, and then I'll change my white balance instead of saying as shot to what I use, so flash, and now I have a little bit of a more natural kind of skin tone and color right now. With Camera Raw, I don't like to do too much of the edit here. I'll do some minor adjustments just because the majority of anything that's going to be changing in this image is actually going to be done in Photoshop itself. For some color correction, for vibrancy and saturation, I actually don't use the color mixer. Sometimes I will, depending on the color tones that are actually in the image, if I can't fix them in my calibration tool. But usually I don't touch this too much. I usually start by pumping up the blue primary saturation, because if you see, it kind of adds some vibrancy to the skin and it lightens it up a little bit. So I'll put it to 100 here, and we'll just click that little eye here and show the difference here. Now I'm probably not going to have it at 100%. Usually I start at about 50, especially for skin tones. More typically my skin tone. So you see it just kind of adds a little bit more life to the skin, and it doesn't look so lifeless and pale. So next we're going to go to our detail panel here, and we're going to actually drop our radius all the way to 0.5, and we're going to pump our detail all the way up. And then after that, I think we should be good, because exposure wise, coming out of the camera, it came out pretty good in how I wanted it to. Actually, I might just reset these highlights. Let me pump up the shadows maybe just a little bit. Sorry, this is not a scripted edit. This is just kind of my process that goes in my head. Instead of saying it in my head, I'm going to speak it out loud so you can kind of understand how I'm thinking and why I'm choosing what I'm doing. Alright, so that looks pretty good to me. So what we're going to do, I'm going to click open, and we're going to open up in Photoshop proper here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of the image so we can work with that. So I am on Windows, as you see, so I know these commands. Use the appropriate commands if you're on Mac. I don't know what they are off the top of my head because it's been a very long time since I've used a Mac. So to create this copy, you just hit Control, Shift, Alt, and N. You see I made a new layer there, and then I'm actually going to continue to hold down Control, Shift, and Alt, and I'm going to hit E. So it's going to stamp my new layer in here. So you see, same thing. So any changes I make here would just be anything new. If I don't like it, I can get rid of it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add what we would call micro contrast. So instead of adding contrast across the entire image, the contrast we're going to add is actually going to focus around the details of like the hair, the eyes, nose, the mouth, and everything. So how we do that is actually going to be creating a black and white layer, or adjustment layer, I'm sorry, I forgot what it was. And we're just going to kind of do some initial adjustments here. You're going to see I'm actually going to darken the skin. And we're going to pump up the yellow. So really the only two that we really are going to adjust, especially for portraits, are just these two layers, the reds and yellows. And what we're going to do is go down to our, how we're going to overlay the layer. And we're going to go down to soft light. And you see at 100% it kind of looks funky. Doesn't really look good. So what we're going to do is we're going to initially drop it down to 20% just to see what that looks like. And we're just going to flip this layer on and off and kind of see the difference. So you see it doesn't change a whole lot, but the image looks a lot more dynamic now with the contrast. So what we're actually going to do is, if you see what it's actually doing here, I'm just going to move the reds up and down, and you'll see what's actually changing in the image. So just the skins are kind of, the brighter part of my skin is changing, and then for the yellows we'll see it's kind of doing the same thing but not as drastic as the reds are. So we're going to put that at about 35. And if you don't like how contrasted this all looks, you can always pump it back on and take it down to like 15% and just see what you think there. I can't get 15, so try 16. So I think that looks pretty good. And you'll notice that the eyes are kind of dark right now. We're going to do something later that's actually going to help brighten those and kind of add a little bit of color to the eyes so they don't look so muted out. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of adjust the color balance of the image. So we're going to do another adjustment layer with color balance, and we're going to go to shadows, and we're going to do some opposing tones. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to add 5 to the blues, -5 to the cyan and red. So you see already we've kind of changed the tone a little bit, and this is actually going to adjust the contrast as well. So you see it's already kind of dark right now, or it's darker than it was. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to go highlights, and we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to go +5 on the cyan and red, and we're going to -5 on the yellow and blue. So you see what has happened here is it's added a little bit more contrast to the image again, while still maintaining a lot of the color tones of the skin, but it's added a little bit more almost like a split toning sort of look to like the shadows and darker areas of the image. I'm just gonna flip this on and off again so you can kind of see. Sometimes this adjustment is a little aggressive for what I like, so I actually just pump down the opacity a little bit. Trying to hit 80, there we go. So I think that looks pretty good there, so I'm happy with that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the eyes. And how we're going to do that is we're actually going to add a curves layer, and we are going to do nothing to it. We're going to leave it as it is. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to brighten up the eyes a little bit. So we're going to do a screen. Okay, you see it's very blown out. What we're going to do next is we're going to put a mask on it, and then we're going to hit Control I, and it's going to invert. So essentially what we're going to do now is paint that mask on, or that layer, on only the spots that we want to use. So we're going to hit our brush, and we're going to zoom in. So we're going to hold Alt and use our scroll wheel. I'm going to go into the eyes here, and we're going to use our brackets to lower down our brush. And up here at the opacity, flow, and smoothing, we're just going to change our flow down to about 3%. Alright, and what we're going to do is we're going to start painting over this very delicately, not very much. We're going to do the same thing over here just to see if we can kind of get it at the same time. Alright, so just that alone, you'll see I'm going to flip the layer on and off. You see the eyes, they've definitely brightened up. So now we're going to do another curves layer, and we're going to do nothing to it again. We're going to leave it as is. I'm going to come down to our drop box here, and we're going to do color dodge. So again, you see it looks very bad like this. We're going to do another mask. We're going to hit Control I again. We're going to get rid of it, and we're going to paint on, again, the same thing we did with the previous mask with the screen. We're just going to paint what we want, and that's just over the colored part of the eyes. Alright, so we're going to flip this layer on and off, and you're going to see that it's not too much of a difference, but it is making a difference. And anything we do, we don't want it to be overly crazy, because we don't want it to look unnatural. And I think flipping this on and off, I think this eye, especially this spot right here, is a little too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit X and flip our colors over here, and we're just going to do a swipe, and we're going to remove a little bit of the brightness of this here, so it's not so bright. Okay, so I think that looks better. We're going to zoom back out, and just to see the image overall, it looks like I actually have two different colored eyes here. So this is going to be the color dodger layer. You see a very subtle difference, and this is going to be our screen layer. A little bit more of a visible difference. So that's all there is to that. So now the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, flatten my image. I'm going to hit Control J to duplicate, and we're going to sharpen the image to finish off. So we're going to go to Filter, Other, we're going to do a high pass. So as you see, it makes a gray image. And right now, normally you can see some of the image below this, and we're going to flip this all the way up so you can see what it does here. It's not showing. Oh, it's just taking its time. So you see it has like this weird gray hazy look to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to pump this down, and really you just want to have this down enough to where you can kind of see the details and what you want. So usually 1.5 to 2 is where we want it to be. So as you can see right here, we can kind of see the eyes coming through right here. And that's what we want. We just want some of these details around the parts that we want sharp. We're going to hit OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to overlay this layer. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to flip this on and off. You can kind of see very little what this does. It might be easier to zoom in and see. I'm going to flip off and on. So you see it's just adding very delicate sharpness to this. But we don't want sharpness on the entire image, because if you notice, like the hairs on my face right here are brightening up, and I really don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is what we did before with the curves layers, is we're going to create a layer mask, and then we're going to invert. So now we have the mask, or the high pass is off right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to zoom back out, and we're going to take our brush, what we did before, we'll make sure it's on white, and we're actually just going to turn our flow all the way up to 100%. And we're only going to sharpen the spots that we want. So we're going to just do right over the eye, and then over the mouth, and maybe this side too, even though it is out of focus a little bit. So what this will do is it'll make the parts that you want sharper without over sharpening everything else around it, and which will in turn kind of make the image look sharper in itself. With that done, we're just going to flatten the image, and sometimes I will add a curves layer to add that sort of matte look. I'm probably not going to do that with this image, but how I would normally do that is just bring up your curve and just grab your black side here and just pump it up just a little bit, not too much, nothing too crazy, then just drop it back down to the line. And then usually then I'll kind of see what that does, because sometimes what happens is when I do this, I'll start to have my highlights blow out a little bit. So how you can kind of go or bring the highlights back is dropping this down a little bit, and when I drop it, you see those highlights kind of flatten down a little bit. or you could take it here and just drop down a little bit here if you want to do that as well. But the highlights didn't blow out. So that's how I would normally do that. And I actually am not hating how it's looking. I may drop this down just a little bit because I don't want it to be over exaggerated. And I'll actually probably keep that like it is. So we'll just keep that as it is. So again, like I said, I'm just going to be speaking what's going on in my head out loud. And that's the great thing about Photoshop is like I can come in with a plan and then halfway through find something or do something that could either be an accident or something I didn't think would look good actually does look good, and then I'll run with it. So I try to go in with like a consistent plan because like especially with studio images I like to be a consistent theme, like a consistent style. But I mean sometimes, you know, as Bob Ross says, happy accidents do happen. So this is all I do to my studio images like this. Like I said, it's very simple. A lot of this I actually got from watching Sean Tucker. He's a photographer that I believe he's based in London. He's an absolutely incredible studio photographer and just portrait photographer all around. And I will put a link to his page in the bio just so you can kind of see where some of my inspiration for a lot of this came from. I don't want to say that I'm copying his style, but he has definitely inspired me to shoot images like this. I haven't touched my strobe in a while, and he kind of watching his stuff kind of pushed me to do that. And then just seeing how he edits definitely inspired me to want to do it more. So I hope that this was helpful. I plan on doing some more like this, especially with more portraits with different people, so you don't have to look at my face the entire time. You know, I do landscapes as well, so I will eventually do some editing videos for that as well. But if you like this video, hit the like button. If you do want to be up to date for more in the future, you know, you can subscribe and hit the notification bell, everything like that. So thank you for coming by, and I hope you all have a great week.